Welcome. Tonight we travel not through time, but through memory, not in search of emperors or battles, but to find the quiet places where stories sleep between stones, where whispers settle like dust on marble floors. You are in Rome now, not the Rome of tourists or textbooks, but the Rome that lives in the hush of twilight, in olive groves, in candlelight. These are stories told in low voices, shared beside fountains, written in hidden letters, tucked into the corners of mosaics. Close your eyes. Breathe deeply. Let your thoughts slow down like the Tiber at dusk. Tonight, we listen to the softest tales of the empire, the ones the moon remembers best. These are the whispers of Rome. The Vestal Virgin's Lantern. In the very center of ancient Rome, where the Forum once pulsed with voices and vows, there stood a circular temple, open to the sky. Inside, a flame burned, soft, eternal. And on this night, under a cloak of stars, a young Vestal walks barefoot across the marble floor. Her name is Livia. Her white robes fall in folds like river mist. Her breath is calm. Her steps are slow. In her hands she holds a small bronze lantern, flickering with a fire drawn from the sacred hearth. This is her night, to tend the flame, to make sure it does not die. The city beyond sleeps. Even the Forum stones feel hushed. But here, within the temple circle, there is only light and memory. Livia kneels. She listens to the crackle of the oil, the rhythm of her breath, the silence of history leaning close. Sometimes, when no one is watching, she hums an old lullaby, one her mother sang before she entered the order, a song about a swallow nesting under the eaves, about spring returning year after year. She hums it now, softly, barely louder than a whisper. The flame dances, the shadows stretch. She thinks of the city outside, the lovers in courtyards, the bakers stirring dough for morning bread, the guards pacing the Palatine gates. None of them know her name, and yet she keeps their future alive in this flame. The Romans believe that as long as this fire burns, the city will stand. She believes it too. Sometimes she imagines herself as the flame, small, quiet, steady, hidden in plain sight. And like the fire, she belongs to no one and to everyone. Outside, the moon slides between clouds. A breeze stirs the hem of her robe. She rises. She carries her lantern to the altar. And as she adds a drop of oil, the flame shivers, then glows brighter. For one moment, one breath, she smiles. In the hush of this sacred place, she is not just a guardian. She is a story. And she knows someday, someone will whisper it. A letter from a soldier at the edge of empire. A long way from Rome, beyond the olive groves, beyond the Appian Way, beyond the temples and triumphal arches, there is a soldier sitting by a campfire beneath a canopy of foreign stars. His name is Marcus. He is stationed near the northern frontier, at the edge of Britannia, where the air is always cool and the skies wear a veil of mist. Tonight, he writes by the soft light of a wax candle. His scroll is creased from travel, his ink faint but steady. The fire crackles. Around him, the camp is quiet. The other soldiers sleep, some with dreams of home, others without dreams at all. But Marcus, he writes, "My dearest daughter, Livia." The ink glides slowly. His fingers are rough from sword training, but they know how to be gentle. He tells her about the fog that rolls over the hills in the morning, how it curls like steam from warm milk. He tells her about the robin that perches on his tent rope each evening, how it chirps once before flying away. He writes of the people here, how their language sings in strange tones, but their children laugh just like hers. He writes of a tree, bent by wind, where he sits to watch the sun disappear each night. It is not Rome, he says, but it is peaceful. Then he pauses. The candle's flame flutters in the wind. He looks up. The stars are different here, sharper, distant, but still stars. When you look at the sky, he writes, know that I am looking too, even from here. He thinks of her smile, the way she once ran barefoot through lavender fields near Tusculum. He thinks of her hands covered in flour, helping her mother knead dough for morning bread. The scroll is nearly full now. At the bottom, he adds something he's never written before. When I return, he writes, we will sit by the fire, just like this, and I will tell you everything, slowly, softly. He seals the letter with warm wax, presses his signet ring gently. The wind rustles the trees. A fox pads by in the shadows, silent, golden-eyed, wild and free. Marcus nods at the creature, as if to a friend. Then he lies down beneath his wool cloak, the letter tucked close to his heart. The fire crackles. The stars remain. In a land far from Rome, a father dreams of home, and a daughter hundreds of miles away stirs in her sleep, as if she already knows. The sleepy streets of Pompeii before the eruption. The year is 79 C. The sun has long since set behind the silhouette of Vesuvius, and in the city of Pompeii a gentle hush drapes the streets. There is no thunder, no trembling, no ash in the air, only the calm of a city falling asleep. The baker finishes sweeping the last handful of flour from his stone floor. He wipes his hands on a worn cloth, places tomorrow's dough to rise, and steps outside. A warm breeze passes. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barks once, then is quiet. The baker stretches. His muscles ache, but not unkindly. Above him, the stars are clear and playful. The mountain, dark and still, watches like an old friend. Across the way, a mother settles her child onto a straw mattress. She hums softly, a tune she learned from her grandmother, passed down like recipes and wedding bracelets. The child clutches a small wooden horse, one ear chewed smooth by time. The house is quiet except for the creak of shutters in the breeze, and the rhythmic breathing of sleep approaching. In another home, a woman waters a pomegranate tree in a courtyard. The lantern light spills across her arms, golden and warm. She presses her hand to the tree's bark and whispers something no one else hears. A wish, maybe. A name. A memory. The leaves rustle gently in response. A cat winds between amphorae stacked near a wine shop. It pauses at a sun-warmed step, kneads the air, and curls into a circle. Farther down the road, mosaic floors cool under the night air. The stones seem to sigh, as if grateful for rest. On the wall of a villa, painted gods stand frozen in eternal color. They watch over the night with unblinking eyes. but even they seem softer now, sleepier. The wind carries the scent of figs, wine, and something distant, something earthly and deep, but no one notices. Not yet, for now Pompeii sleeps. The city breathes in, the people dream, and beneath it all, the mountain waits, silent, gentle, patient. Just one more night. The boy who drew maps of Rome in the dust. Morning has passed. The sun leans westward now, and the shadows grow longer across the alleyways of the Suburra. Rome's beating heart, tangled and loud, alive with color, noise, and stories. But in a quiet courtyard behind a baker's stall, a young boy kneels in the dust. His name is Tullius. He holds a stick, smooth from use, and the ground before him is his canvas. With slow, careful strokes, he draws the city as he sees it, not just as it is, but as it lives inside his mind. First, the Capitoline Hill, then the Forum, its arches and columns drawn in long, straight lines. He carves a tiny circle to mark the Temple of Jupiter, then a rectangle for the baths his uncle works at. His tongue peeks from the corner of his mouth. He is focused. Around him, the world moves. A merchant calls out the price of lemons. A neighbor hammers a shoe sole back into shape. A bird chirps above, but the boy is in another world. His world. One where he is a builder, a planner, an architect of imagination. A girl walks past and stops. She tilts her head, then smiles. Is that the Pantheon? He nods shyly, tapping a perfect circle with his stick. And this? She asks, pointing. That's the Tiber, he says, and this line here is a bridge I haven't finished yet. The girl sits beside him. Together they draw ships on the river, small rectangles with triangle sails, guided by dots that might be people. The dust is soft, warm from the sun. His hands move faster now, lines crisscrossing like spider webs. He draws an amphitheater larger than life, a garden where the emperors walk, a gate that leads straight into the stars. When the girl leaves, she looks back and says, "One day, you'll build it for real." The boy smiles, though he's not sure what she means. He isn't building for Rome. He's building for himself. As dusk falls, a breeze swirls through the alley. The dust dances. Some of the lines begin to fade, but the boy doesn't mind. Tomorrow he'll draw it all again. Better, bigger, with new streets and towers only he can imagine. And maybe, someday, someone will walk them. A feast for the moon goddess. High above the sleeping rooftops of Rome, on the quiet slope of the Aventine Hill, a woman sets a small table beneath the open sky. She moves slowly, deliberately. Her name is Sabina. Her hair is silver, and her steps are careful, but her eyes are steady, lit with the kind of warmth that only comes from many years of looking up at the moon. Tonight is a special night. The full moon has risen, and Sabina, as she's done since she was a girl, prepares a silent feast for the goddess Luna, not for superstition, not out of obligation, but for the quiet joy of devotion. She sets down a dish of honey cakes still warm. Their scent curls into the night air, sweet and soft. She places a bowl of milk beside them, a handful of crushed lavender in a small clay cup. and lastly 3 silver coins, polished so brightly they reflect the moon itself. The night is still. The sky is clear. Stars shimmer like tiny offerings of their own. Sabina sits on a woven cushion, folds her hands in her lap, and tilts her face to the heavens. "Thank you," she says quietly. "Not for anything in particular. Just thank you for another night, for another moon, for the memory of her mother's laughter and the way the lemon tree still blooms in spring. A soft breeze rustles the fig leaves. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barks once, then silence. Sabina speaks again, not out loud, but in her thoughts. She sends small hopes upward, that her son is safe in the provinces, that the aches in her knees will pass, that tomorrow's bread will rise just right. She knows Luna listens, not because she answers, but because Sabina feels lighter when she shares her thoughts with the sky. The milk glows pale in the moonlight. The honey cakes steam gently in the cool night. The silver coins sit still, unmoving, unclaimed. And yet Sabina smiles. The goddess doesn't need offerings. She only needs to be remembered. Sabina stands. She gives a soft bow of her head, leaves the feast just as it is, as she always does. For the moon, for the wind, or for the dreams that pass through Rome while everyone else sleeps. The Emperor's Night Garden. In the heart of the Palatine Hill, beyond marble columns and golden doors, past guards standing still in polished armor, lies a secret place. A garden, hidden behind the Emperor's private quarters. And tonight, it is not ruled by power, but by peace. The moon is high, and Rome is asleep. The garden glows in silver light. Olive trees sway gently. A fountain trickles like a whisper. Moths circle the warm tips of lanterns, and the scent of night-blooming jasmine floats in the air. The Emperor walks here alone. His name, his titles, his triumphs, all left behind for the moment. Tonight, he is just a man walking barefoot on smooth stone paths, listening to the wind move through laurel branches. He stops beside a small pond. The water is still, reflecting the moon and stars so clearly it feels like he's staring into the sky itself. He kneels and touches the surface with 2 fingers. The reflection ripples, and for a moment, it feels like time ripples with it. He remembers being a boy, running through these same gardens, chasing dragonflies in the warm air, imagining he'd one day ride a horse across every road in the empire. He smiles. He walks to the olive grove planted by his father. The trees are old now, twisted and noble. He places his hand on the trunk of the eldest one. The bark is warm from the day's sun. The silence is soft, not heavy. It feels like the tree is listening. In the distance, a night bird sings. The Emperor closes his eyes. In this garden, there are no messengers, no maps, no marble busts, just leaves and soil and sky and the rhythm of his own quiet breathing. Before he leaves, he steps beneath the fig tree. He plucks a ripe fig from a low branch, bites into it slowly. The sweetness coats his tongue, a gift from the earth, not for a ruler, but for a human being. As he returns to his chambers, he looks back once more. The garden stays still, watching, waiting. A place where power dissolves, and all that's left is the truth of a moment beneath the stars. The Mosaic Maker's Quiet Secret. Beneath a Roman villa, sunlight filters through a half-open shutter, casting soft gold onto a floor still in progress. A mosaic takes shape, tile by tiny tile, and beside it, kneeling in silence, is a woman named Flavia. Her fingers move with patience, dipping each tessera, a small square of stone, into a bowl of pale clay, then placing it precisely into the pattern forming beneath her hands. This is her art, not loud or grand, not signed or spoken of in forums, but it lasts, stone on stone, color beside color, a dance of angles and light. Today's commission is a depiction of Neptune. She outlines the sea god's hair in soft green glass, lets the blues ripple like gentle waves. She works in rhythm with her breath, the heartbeat of the house, the distant lull of city sounds beyond the walls. And then, just before the mosaic is complete, she reaches into a separate pouch. From it, she draws a single piece of marble. It is not part of the official design. This piece is hers. She places it in the corner, tucked between lines, hidden from all but the most curious eyes. Sometimes it's a star, sometimes a fish, sometimes a shape known only to her. It is her secret, her signature, a soft whisper in stone. She's done this since her first commission. Years ago, on a bathhouse floor no one notices anymore, and she'll keep doing it, because every artist deserves to leave something behind. Not for fame, not for credit, but for connection, for the hope that someone someday might pause and wonder who placed that single golden tile so carefully in a field of blue. Evening comes. She wipes her hands. The floor glows, smooth and glistening under lamplight. The owner of the villa will be pleased, but he'll never know. That hidden tile, like a name hummed softly in a crowded room, will remain hers forever. A Merchant's Dream in Ostia. The sea hums like a lullaby, and the night winds carry salt and spice into the port town of Ostia. Ships bob gently in the harbor. Ropes creak, canvas flutters, and water kisses wood with a rhythm as old as time. On the stone dock, surrounded by crates of olives and amphorae filled with wine, a merchant rests his back against a barrel and closes his eyes. His name is Lucius. His sandals are dusty, his tunic smells faintly of cinnamon and myrrh, and his heart is full of places he's been, and those he's only dreamed of. Tonight his ship is late. The sailors are asleep. The lamps are low. And so Lucius allows himself a rare gift. Stillness. He exhales, and the sea answers. In his mind he walks through markets in Carthage, where the air is thick with laughter and roasted lamb. He sails again down the Nile, where crocodiles blink lazily and temples rise from golden shores. He eats ripe figs under Athenian skies, bargains for silk in distant ports, and feels sand beneath his feet in lands beyond the empire's edge. In truth, some of these places he has only heard about, but dreams do not need borders, and Lucius has always believed that part of the merchant's craft is imagining the story each good has carried. From tree to ship, from hand to hand, a breeze lifts his curls. A gull calls overhead, sleepy and half-hearted. Lucius smiles in his sleep, He dreams now of home, not Rome, with its marble and senators, but the small domus where his wife waits with warm bread and a faded blanket. He dreams of his daughter's little voice counting the stars, of the cat that always finds a spot in his lap, of olive oil poured over lentils and the scent of rosemary in their garden. The harbor shifts and sighs. The tide is gentle. Somewhere far away his ship approaches, but for now he sleeps, surrounded by goods, carried by waves, and wrapped in the soft hush of the sea's eternal song. A whisper beneath the Colosseum. The crowds are gone. The sun has set behind the Palatine Hill, and the great Colosseum, so often loud, proud, alive, now rests in deep silence. The stone arches catch the moonlight like ripples on still water, and far beneath the arena floor, where shadows linger and time feels slower, a single figure walks with purpose, holding a broom in one hand and a folded cloth in the other. Her name is Marcia. She is not a gladiator, not an empress, not a name carved into marble. She is a cleaner, and this is her favorite time of day. Down in the Hippodrome, the underground tunnels where animals once waited, where fighters once prayed, she moves gently between old walls. Her broom sweeps softly. Each stroke echoes like a whisper across centuries. But she is not afraid. She's worked here for years. She knows the stones, the stillness, the hush. And maybe the ghosts know her too. Evening, she says quietly to the air, not expecting a reply, but offering the greeting anyway. She hums a lullaby her grandmother taught her, one about olive trees and starlight. Her voice is soft, steady. The notes linger on the arches and settle like dust. Sometimes she imagines who else has stood here, the sand soaked in story. She imagines the breath before battle, the prayers before release, the silence after everything is over. Before she leaves, she reaches into the fold of her apron and pulls out a single wildflower, small, yellow, picked from a crack in the pavement outside. She walks to the center of the old corridor and lays it down. A gesture, not for spectacle, not for history, but for peace. She says nothing more, just bows her head, brushes one last corner, and climbs back into the moonlit night. The Colosseum remains quiet, still, watching, as if holding its breath, so her whisper can last just a little longer. The Library of Dreams in Alexandria. Far from the heart of Rome, across the warm waters of the Mediterranean, where papyrus sways in river wind, and stone sphinxes sit in eternal thought, there stands the great library of Alexandria. And within its walls, late at night, when the city sleeps and the lanterns burn low, a Roman scribe dips his pen into ink. His name is Gaius. He is not a philosopher, nor a senator, nor a man known beyond the columns of the library itself, but he is a dreamer and a keeper of words. Around him rise shelves taller than men, filled with scrolls from every corner of the known world. Poems from Persia, maps from Carthage, laws from Athens, riddles from India, and songs from the streets of Rome. He reads slowly, each line a thread in a much larger tapestry, each word a whisper from another life. He copies by oil lamp, his quill scratching softly, rhythmically, across the parchment. Outside, waves lap the Alexandrian harbor. The lighthouse pulses its light across the sea. But here, inside, time does not move. It folds inward, quiet and infinite. Sometimes he pauses, leans back, and simply listens. The air carries no voices, yet it feels full, as if the scrolls themselves are breathing, as if 1,000 forgotten authors are smiling in their sleep. Gaius once believed that writing was about power, but here, surrounded by knowledge too vast to ever read alone, he understands something deeper, that stories are bridges, that we are all always reaching for one another, across oceans, across time, trying to say, I was here, I saw beauty, I loved, I wondered. He finishes the scroll, blows gently on the ink, rolls it closed and places it in a basket to be shelved. Before he leaves, he lingers, places his hand on one of the marble columns, closes his eyes, and in the silence, he hears it. Not words, not music, but something softer still, the sound of dreams being remembered. The architect of the Pantheon. Long after the workers have gone, and the hammering has faded into memory, a single figure stands beneath the newly finished dome of the Pantheon. His name is Lucius, and though history may forget it, he was one of the many who brought this temple into being. Not a patron or emperor, but an architect of shadows and stone. He walks slowly across the marble floor, the sound of his sandals echoing like soft drums in the vast open air. Above him, the oculus opens to the heavens, a perfect circle, a breath of sky cradled by concrete and faith. Moonlight spills through the opening, casting a silver disk onto the floor. Lucius steps into the light. He closes his eyes, lifts his face, and lets the silence settle around him. He does not need applause. The perfection of the dome is enough, not because it is grand, but because it holds stillness, a kind of sacred calm. He thinks of the men who shaped its frame, of the lime dust on his skin, of the long hours spent drawing lines by lamplight, and he smiles. For all the temples, columns, and theaters he's helped build, this place feels like a prayer that never needs to be spoken. Before he leaves, he touches the base of a column, a silent thank you to the stone. Then he walks away, knowing that long after his bones return to dust, the Pantheon will remain, open to the sky and filled with quiet. The Philosopher's Night. In a quiet corner of a villa outside Rome, where olive trees lean toward the setting sun, a philosopher named Cassius lights his evening lantern. He is old now, his scrolls faded at the edges, his voice soft and deliberate. But each night he returns to his writing bench, not to teach, not to argue, but to wonder. Tonight, he writes not about war or politics, but about kindness. He dips his pen into ink the color of dusk, and begins to copy a thought he once had in youth. Power is fleeting, but gentleness lingers like perfume. Outside, the cicadas hum. Inside, the lamplight flickers. On the wall above him hangs a tiny bronze medallion of Marcus Aurelius, once his student, now an emperor. Sometimes Cassius wonders if Marcus still remembers the lessons learned under fig trees, the conversations that wandered late into the night. He does not seek credit. Philosophy, after all, is not built to be owned, only shared. As the candle burns lower, he sets down his pen. He folds the scroll gently and places it into a box alongside a dozen others, each one a quiet offering to time. He knows most will never be read, but he also knows this. One thought, planted with love, can echo for centuries, and sometimes the softest voice reaches the farthest. The Midwife of Livia Drusilla. In a villa on the Palatine Hill, before the marble statues, before the scrolls, before she became empress, Livia Drusilla was simply a girl, standing on the edge of womanhood and holding her breath. In the candlelit chamber, kneeling beside her with a cloth in hand, was a woman named Antonia, not noble, not titled, a midwife. She had delivered children of generals and grain merchants alike, but tonight it was different. The daughter of a powerful house, young and nervous, looked to her not for status, but for safety, for calm. Antonia whispered a blessing into the olive oil she warmed, one passed down from Etruscan grandmothers and Sabine mothers before them. She touched Livia's forehead gently. "You are stronger than fear," she said, "and softer than stone." Outside, Rome moved on. Carts creaked, dogs barked, senators argued. But in this small room, there was only breath and waiting. Hours passed, and in the quiet rhythm of labor, Antonia held her hand, wiped her brow, and never once looked away. When the child finally cried, a voice new to the world, Livia wept, and Antonia smiled, her fingers trembling from both relief and reverence. She would not be carved into marble. Her name would never be etched into coins. But in that moment, she held the future in her arms, a child of the Julio-Claudian line, a life that would ripple through empires. And she rocked him slowly, humming a lullaby no historian would ever record. Only the walls would remember. Only the moon. The Librarian of Pergamon. In the ancient city of Pergamon, nestled on a hill that gazes toward the Aegean Sea, there stands a library, not as vast as Alexandria's, but filled with something just as precious, quiet. Inside, rows of scrolls sleep in stone alcoves. The air smells of ink and beeswax. And in the center, bent over a wooden table, is a woman named Callista, the chief librarian. She has memorized the feel of every scroll spine, knows where Cicero hides, where Aristotle waits, where poems from Syria blush between dusty epics. But tonight, she does not organize. Tonight she reads for herself. She unrolls a parchment older than her grandmother, its edges curled, its ink slightly faded. A poem, one about a ship that never returns. She reads it slowly, aloud, barely above a whisper, and the words seem to drift upward into the shadows of the ceiling, where they settle like feathers. Outside, the wind moves through fig trees. Inside, she lights a second lamp, not for more light, but for company. She often lights two, one for herself and one for the stories. She imagines the poets leaning close, listening with grateful hearts. Her cat, curled near her feet, twitches in sleep. Somewhere, a young scribe waits for morning. But Callista continues, not to finish the poem, not to reach the end, but to remain inside it, floating, a librarian not of records, but of dreams. She believes some scrolls do not preserve knowledge, but longing, and longing too deserves to be catalogued, shelved, protected, so that one day someone else might sit where she sits and feel less alone. The boy who watched the triumph. On the day of the triumph, the city bloomed. Garlands hung from doorways. Drums echoed through alleyways. Incense burned sweet and thick, and all of Rome leaned forward to watch glory roll past in a river of gold. But among the crowd, pressed between a butcher and a vendor selling almonds, stood a boy named Felix. He clutched a bundle of grape leaves in one hand. His sandals were worn thin, but his eyes were wide enough to hold an empire. He had never seen an elephant before. It passed in front of him, draped in silk, its eyes slow and mournful, its ears like sails. Behind it came soldiers with polished armor and painted shields, statues of conquered gods, banners soaked in foreign dust, and then the general. Standing in his chariot, crowned with laurel, his face unreadable, a slave at his side whispered into his ear, "Remember, you are mortal." The boy didn't understand why a man with such splendor would need reminding, but years later, he would remember that part the most, more than the glittering armor, more than the cheering. He would remember the whisper, that even greatness needs grounding, that even emperors drift. When the parade faded and Rome returned to ordinary noise, Felix stayed behind, sitting on a stone step. He took the grape leaves and folded them into the shape of a crown. Not for glory, just to see how it felt. He placed it gently on his own head, then laughed, then took it off. He left it on the step for someone else to find. Perhaps another boy, or perhaps no one. But that moment, that hush after the roar, would follow him forever, like a song he could never quite hum, but always remembered how it made him feel. The Senate's empty chair. Deep within the Curia Julia, after the senators have departed and the scribes have snuffed the lamps, a single chair remains lit by moonlight. The chamber is silent now. No echo of sandals or murmurs or raised voices. Only stone and memory. Tonight, the wind drifts through a crack in the high window, and the flame of the oil lamp beside the tribunal flickers. It is here that laws were debated, lives decided, futures forged. And it is here that a man once sat, quiet, measured, a senator named Gnaeus, not famous, not infamous, just loyal, thoughtful, present. For years he sat in the same chair, his hands folded, his thoughts never shouted but always heard. He believed that reason was a river, slow, patient, always finding its way. And though he's been gone now for many winters, his chair still feels warmed by presence. Some say you can hear the soft clearing of a throat, or the gentle shifting of robes, when the chamber is otherwise empty. Not a haunting, just a trace of discipline, of care, a reminder that the weight of power can be held quietly and with grace. Outside, Rome breathes. The night deepens. But within these stone walls, that one chair remains in the moon's embrace, still waiting for reason to return. the archer of the 9th Legion. In the far reaches of Britannia, where the mist clings to hills like wool, and the wind carries whispers in a language not taught in Rome, a campfire glows at the edge of Hadrian's wall. The 9th Legion sleeps in tents, their helmets resting on wooden pegs, their bodies weary from march and watch. But one man remains awake. His name is Aelius, an archer. He sits with his bow across his knees, running his fingers along the polished curve as if it were a lyre. He is not from Rome. He was born in Numidia, beneath a hotter sun. Yet here he is, beneath strange stars, beside a cold fire, part of a legion that watches the end of the world. He writes letters in his mind, to his mother, to the boy he once raced through olive groves, to a version of himself who still believed he'd be a musician. Each arrow in his quiver carries a name, not of enemies, but of memories. He has never loosed them in battle. When danger rises, he waits, breathes, remembers. He believes that precision begins with stillness. The fire crackles low. A shadow moves in the trees, but Aelius doesn't reach for his bow, not yet. He listens to the silence between gusts of wind. Like a song without words, he thinks of the sea, of the road that leads back home, of the temple bells that once rang at dusk. And he wonders, is the empire meant to stretch this far? Or are its soldiers simply dreamers chasing the edge of the map? Agrippina's mirror. In the quiet stillness before dawn, while the torches in the palace corridors burn low, a woman stands before her polished bronze mirror. Her name is Agrippina, empress, mother, strategist, survivor. Tonight her face is bare, her hair unbound, her reflection younger than the history it carries. She leans in close, not to examine beauty, but to remember who she was, before the titles, before the whispers, before the sun with the empire in his palm. Outside, Rome stirs. The Forum lies in shadow. The Palatine walls remember every vow made and broken within them. But here, in this small chamber, Agrippina is not made of marble. She is bone and breath and thought. She touches the mirror gently. Behind her, folded neatly, lies her purple cloak. Symbols of rank, symbols of danger. In the polished surface, she sees two versions of herself, the daughter of Germanicus and the mother of Nero. She closes her eyes. For one moment, there is no court, no intrigue, no history watching, only silence. The mirror catches the flicker of a candle. Her face softens. Agrippina whispers an old poem, one her mother once sang beneath the laurel trees, a song not of power, but of violets in spring, and waves crashing softly at dusk. The mirror does not answer, but it holds the echo, and when she finally turns away, leaving her reflection behind, it remains. Quiet, eternal, like a secret held in polished bronze. The Census at Bethlehem. Across the eastern provinces of the empire, orders had been sent, names to be counted, families to return home. The census of Caesar Augustus had reached even the smallest hills, even the quiet town of Bethlehem. On a cold night lit only by stars, Travelers gathered at the city gates. One such traveler was Joseph, a carpenter with tired feet and a patient heart. Beside him, wrapped in wool and silence, was Mary. Her hands rested gently on her swollen belly. The census did not know her name. The parchment scrolls would list heads of households, occupations, numbers, but not miracles, not hope. They found shelter in a stable, the only space left, and there, beneath beams of cedar, beside donkeys chewing straw, Mary exhaled, and the child was born. The empire did not notice. No trumpet, no decree, just a breath, a mother's hum, the soft murmur of animals, and a light that seemed to hover in the air. Somewhere, a scribe etched Joseph's name onto a scroll, another number among thousands. But the child, unnamed on that paper, unnamed in Rome, would one day be called by many, and the empire that counted him only as a footnote would one day kneel at his name. For now, he sleeps, wrapped in linen, held in a mother's arms, watched only by stars, and the silence of a census that could never measure what had truly arrived. The Last Amphora. In a quiet alley near the Aventine, behind a green wooden door with a cracked bronze handle, an old man polishes the last amphora in his cellar. His name is Tertius. For nearly 40 years he made wine for Rome's finest tables. Not the emperors, but the poets, the philosophers, the lovers who toasted under moonlight. Now, his hands are slower. His fingers trace the painted vine leaves on the clay with reverence. He remembers when this batch was bottled, during the Saturnalia of Gaius's first year. There was laughter, dancing in the courtyard, a kiss behind the fig trees. So much has changed. The streets are louder, the faces new. But this amphora, it remembers. He lights a small oil lamp and opens the wax seal. The scent rises. Sun-warmed grape, oak a note of time. He pours a single cup and sits at the table, not to celebrate, not to mourn, just to feel the past, resting gently on his tongue. In that sip he tastes old voices, a friend who always laughed too loud, a girl who wore rosemary in her hair, a poem that was never finished. He closes his eyes and leans back. The amphora sits beside him, the last of its kind. Tomorrow he may give it to the tavern boy, or leave it for the earth, but tonight it is just his. A quiet vintage from a quieter time. And as the night deepens, Tertius lifts his cup and says a single word to the shadows. Salve. A greeting. A goodbye. A blessing in one. The Garden of Hadrian. The Villa of Hadrian stretches across the hills of Tibur, like a poem carved into the earth. Domes, colonnades, reflecting pools that ripple like thoughts. And at twilight, when Rome feels far away, the emperor walks alone through his garden. His robe drapes gently behind him. His hand brushes the leaves of a laurel tree. The fountains whisper. Statues watch. But Hadrian listens for only one voice. Antinous, the boy lost to the Nile. Not a god, not yet, but still present in every petal, every echo. The emperor stops beside a small pond lined with reeds. The moon reflects, and so does memory. A glimpse of a smile, a hand reaching for his, the sound of laughter beside a lion statue. "You would have liked this garden," he murmurs. He kneels and picks a bloom, a violet, wild and perfect. He places it at the base of a marble pedestal. Not an offering, not a symbol, just a hello. The stars begin to appear. The crickets sing. Hadrian closes his eyes. He sees Alexandria, the glint of sunlight on water. The moment he knew, this is not a place of sorrow, though it holds grief. It is a place of remembering, a sacred, quiet act of love. The emperor rises, walks back toward the columned hall. The garden remains, blooming, breathing, like a story no longer told, but still felt. The letters of Pliny the Younger. In a villa perched above the Bay of Naples, where the breeze carries the scent of citrus and salt, a man sits by candlelight, writing softly. His name is Pliny, and tonight his ink flows not with records or rhetoric, but with reflections. A letter to a friend, or to time itself. Outside, the shadow of Vesuvius looms, silent, unaware that it will soon become more than a mountain. Pliny dips his pen again. He writes of daily rhythms, the way the sunlight hits his desk each morning, the gossip from the forum, the soft green of the myrtle in his mother's garden. He pauses. The candle flickers, and for a moment he watches the flame lean toward the open window. The stars blink above the dark sea. He writes of philosophy next. The fragility of life, the peace of moderation. Nothing, he writes, is so fleeting as the hour we ignore. He seals the scroll with care. Not all his letters are meant to be read. Some are messages sent into the future, folded into the hands of those not yet born. He wonders what will become of this place. Will people still bathe in the hot springs of Baiae? Will the gardens of Pompeii bloom forever? Or will time, as it always does, fold everything into silence? The candle burns low. Pliny smiles. He knows one thing. Words can last. And tonight, with the sea breathing below and the mountains sleeping above, he lets his voice drift into the stillness, light as ash, but meant to remain. The Trial of the Vestal. In a quiet chamber deep within the house of the Vestals, a girl kneels. Her white robe pools around her feet. Her hands rest in her lap. Her eyes are closed. Tomorrow, she will stand before the Pontifex Maximus. But tonight, she listens to the fire. The sacred flame, Rome's living breath, crackles beside her. She had kept it burning for 12 years, without fail. But now, a whisper has begun to circle the city. A rumor, a betrayal. Whether it is true or not, the gods demand purity, and the people demand ceremony. She opens her eyes. She is not afraid, only quiet. She stands and walks to the hearth. The fire glows, orange and gold. She holds out her hands to it, not for warmth, but for memory. She remembers the day she first arrived, barely 12, her name trembling on the lips of her mother. She remembers learning to chant the prayers, to tend the embers like a lullaby. She remembers the hush of the temple at dawn, a life of silence, of watching, of honoring. Whatever happens tomorrow, the flame still burns tonight. She leans forward, places her palm over her heart, and whispers, "I kept my vow." Outside, the moon hangs like a shield. She returns to her place on the floor, the hem of her robe brushing marble. In this moment, she is not legend, not scandal, not sacred, just a girl, sitting beside a fire that knows all her truths and keeps them. The physician of the Via Sacra. At the edge of the Via Sacra, between a bakery and a scroll seller's stall, there is a narrow doorway marked with a red ribbon and a bronze serpent. It belongs to Drusilla, a physician, not a healer of emperors or senators, but of mothers, wrestlers, beggars, scribes. She wakes before the forum stirs, lights a lamp, grinds her herbs in silence. Her mortar smells of mint and vinegar, of thyme and ground fig bark. She ties back her hair with linen. Her robe is simple, clean, lined with faint lavender from washing. The first knock arrives before sunrise. A child with a fever, an old man with aching joints, a girl with sleepless nights and no words for her worry. Drusilla listens to each one, not just their words, but their silences. "Where does it hurt?" she asks, as she brushes their palms, measures their pulse, feels their warmth like a mother checks a child's brow. She believes every ailment holds a story. And sometimes it's the story that needs healing most. She writes small recipes on scraps of wax tablet, ties them with twine, and tells her patients to breathe deeply when they sip. "And if it doesn't work?" one boy asks. Drusilla smiles. "Then come back. We'll try something gentler." At night, she washes her hands in rose water, lights incense not for ceremony, but for gratitude. She knows the body is fragile, but kindness lingers like medicine in the blood. As the moon rises over the Capitoline, her shop closes, but behind the shutters she writes notes, cures, prayers for the ones who didn't return. Her heart, too, is a kind of scroll, filled with names she never forgets. The Echo of Boudica. The winds howl across the plains of Britannia, not fierce, not cold, but ancient. In the ruins of a burned Roman camp, charred wood creaks beneath the moonlight. No voices now, no banners, only a soldier, young, weary, wandering alone among the ashes. His name is Lucan. He survived the ambush, but something inside him did not. He picks up a shard of bronze, once part of a shield, now scorched and bent like a broken oath. He looks toward the tree line. Somewhere beyond it, she had stood. Boudica, hair like flame, eyes like grief, a voice like thunder rolling through the hills. He had seen her, not from a battlefield's heart, but from its edge, a queen on a chariot, rage braided into her daughter's hair, justice burning in her throat. She had not spoken to him, but she had looked his way, just once. And in that moment, Lucan knew he would never forget her, not because of what she destroyed, but because of what she defended. Not vengeance, but dignity. He sits on the ground, presses his hand to the soil, and feels the warmth still held in the earth. The empire will rebuild. The road will be cleared. Names will be written. Statues raised. But this night, this silence, belongs to her. somewhere, her spirit rides still, not in wrath, but in remembrance. The wind carries a whisper, soft as breath across skin. I was here. Lucan closes his eyes and listens. The birdkeeper of Trastevere. In the winding back streets of Trastevere, where ivy spills from rooftops and laundry dances on quiet lines, there is a courtyard that sings at sunrise, not with flutes, not with prayers, but with birds. Dozens of them, sparrows, doves, finches, and swallows, each with a name whispered softly by the man who tends them. His name is Petronius. He was once a messenger for the Senate, running from forum to palace with scrolls beneath his arm. But now he delivers only peace. Each morning he opens the doors of the small wooden cages. The birds flutter out, not in panic, but in joy. They perch on fountains, on olive branches, on his shoulder, and he hums to them, songs from his childhood, hymns learned from his grandmother's kitchen. The neighbors say his birds bring luck, that a feather found near your doorstep means a blessing is close. He never claims this. He only smiles. Some days he sends birds flying toward the Aventine with ribbons of dyed thread tied to their feet. A message, perhaps, or a prayer. One bird returns with a leaf, another with nothing but sunlight on its wings. But Petronius is content. He believes Rome listens to every flutter, that the gods speak not always in thunder, but sometimes in wings. As twilight comes, he gathers the birds again, one by one. No force, no cages locked, just trust. They return to him, as they always do, and under the hush of night, his courtyard rests, full of feathers, memory, and soft dreams waiting to be sung. The widow at the Temple of Concord. Beneath the Temple of Concord, where the Senate once debated peace and order, a widow kneels before the marble steps. Her name is Tullia. Her hair is veiled. Her hands, calloused from weaving, rest quietly in her lap. She is not noble, not known, but every morning, before the city stirs, she comes to the temple and sits in the shadow of history. Her husband Marcus was a stonemason. He helped carve the steps she kneels upon now. He died last winter just after the pomegranate harvest. Since then, she returns here, not to mourn, but to remember. She believes his hands still live in the stone, that if she listens closely, she might hear his chisel ringing through time. She brings him stories, how the baker's boy fell in love, how their daughter has grown taller, how the rain came early this year. No offerings, no incense, just words and stillness. One morning she finds a sprig of rosemary tucked beneath the step. Not hers, not there yesterday. She smiles. Someone else remembers too. She places her hand on the step, cool and smooth, and whispers, "You built this." Then she stands and walks back into the morning. As the city awakens, the temple remains still, holding her memory and his like stone warmed by the sun. The Sculptor's Apprentice. In a shaded corner of the Campus Martius, beneath scaffolding and sheets of linen, a young apprentice chisels marble. His name is Naso. His master once carved gods for the temples of Augustus. Now, his hands tremble, and it is Naso who holds the tools. Today, They shape a statue, not of a god, but of a woman, seated, thoughtful, holding a scroll in her lap. A poet, the master says. Though she lived quietly, she changed everything. Naso carves the drapery first, fold by fold. He moves slowly, whispering to the stone as he works. We must never rush a soul, his master always says, even if it's made of marble. He thinks of his mother, who recited Virgil as she spun wool, of his sister, who taught herself Greek from a cracked tablet, of the woman he passed once at the Forum, who wrote verses into the dust with her sandal. All of them live in this statue now. When he sculpts the face, he hesitates. He wants it to look real, but also eternal, as if she knows something even the gods do not. As twilight falls, the tools rest. The statue is nearly complete. She stares ahead, serene. Her silence seems to speak, "Remember us." The master places a hand on Naso's shoulder. "It's good," he says, "because you listened." The marble glows in the dying light, soft, as if breathing. And in the stillness, Naso wonders if stone can carry love. He hopes so, because tomorrow the statue will be placed in the library. But tonight, it keeps watch over two sculptors and the many women they remember. The Feast of Saturnalia. The sun dips early in December, but the streets of Rome shine brighter than usual. Candles flicker from every window. Garlands hang across doorposts. It is Saturnalia, a feast of reversal, of laughter and gifts, and of letting go. In a home near the Tiber, a family gathers. The father wearing a wreath, the mother singing an old festival tune, and the household slave seated at the head of the table, just for tonight. For one day roles are traded, and even time seems to loosen its grip. The boy of the house, 10 years old and wide-eyed, watches as his father pours wine for the servants. Everyone claps. He wonders if this is what the gods feel like. Free and joyful, with no need to pretend. Outside, people dance in the street. The baker throws nuts to children. A senator plays a lute badly, and no one minds. The boy slips away briefly and walks to the temple of Saturn, where the statue is unbound for once, its feet freed from the woolen ties. He bows his head and whispers, "Thank you for the joy." No one hears him, but he feels lighter. That night, the family sleeps on cushions. There is no arguing, no counting coins. Only stories, only warmth. And outside, Saturn smiles, for he knows that what humans need is not more order, but the chance, once in a while, to remember how sweet disorder can be, and to laugh without asking permission. The Perfumer of Capri. On the island of Capri, where cliffs rise from a sapphire sea, and the horizon seems to blur into forever, a small cottage rests near a path lined with cypress trees. Its shutters are open to the evening air, and from within, warm lamplight spills onto a stone step. Inside, a woman named Aurelia moves carefully among tiny glass vials. She is a perfumer, not famous, not royal, just quiet and devoted. Her craft is delicate, and her rhythm unhurried. The scent in the room changes with every breath. First rose, then lemon blossom, then a soft trail of crushed myrtle and sweet basil. Each jar she opens seems to carry a season, a memory, a story. Aurelia dips a fine brush into a golden oil and mixes it into a larger bowl of her own design. She closes her eyes and inhales. Her lips curve into a smile. Almost, she whispers to no one. The blend is for no client. No coin has changed hands. It is a gift for the evening breeze, something to leave behind in the folds of night. Outside, waves hush against the rocks. Cicadas sing in the olive trees. She pours the perfume into a small vial and places it on her windowsill. In the morning, the sun will warm the glass, and the scent will drift out, carried over the cliffs, past fig groves, and into the arms of the wind. Someone might pass through a field and pause, feeling something lovely in the air, and not know why they smiled. But Aurelia will know. She will still be here, blending memory and light into bottles no larger than her palm. A perfumer, a dreamer, a woman who bottles whispers and releases them like blessings into the dusk. The seamstress of the Via Flaminia. The Via Flaminia winds northward from Rome, cutting through hills and golden fields, its stones worn smooth by merchants, soldiers, lovers, and poets. Just past the edge of the city, nestled between a fig orchard and a tavern, sits a modest tailor's shop. The awning is faded, the door squeaks gently, and the windows are always open, inviting in the scent of warm bread from next door. Inside, by the glow of a single oil lamp, sits a woman named Livia. Her hands are aged but certain, her eyes sharp, though tired. Thread passes through her fingers like water, and the fabric rests in her lap like a child. Tonight, she is finishing a cloak, a commission from a baker's wife, who wanted something soft and sturdy for her son, recently conscripted. Livia chose forest green wool, thick but breathable. She lined it with a touch of fleece for warmth, and though no one asked, she stitched a quiet design along the hem, a looping vine, barely visible, curling in and out like a whispered lullaby. Every piece she makes holds something more than thread. A memory, a prayer, a promise tucked between each seam. When she reaches the final stitch, she pauses. She picks up a sprig of rosemary from the sill, dried, fragrant, and humble. She tucks it inside the fold of the cloak, near the chest. For courage, she murmurs, not loudly, not for anyone else, just for him. She folds the cloak gently, wraps it in linen, and ties it with twine. Outside, a donkey cart creaks by. The stars blink softly above. Livia places the bundle on a shelf and exhales slowly. Tomorrow she will begin again. A new tunic, a hem to mend. Another quiet story told with fabric and patience. She is not famous. She is not asked to speak, but in every stitch she speaks volumes, and Rome listens. The doves of the Capitoline Hill. Dawn has passed. The sun is soft and golden now, stretching across the rooftops of Rome like a warm blanket. And on the Capitoline Hill, where gods once stood in towering temples, and where senators once debated beneath marble porticos, a quieter scene unfolds. The grand statues remain, their faces weathered by wind and time. But now, they are joined by gentler companions, doves, dozens of them, pale gray and white, with pink feet and curious eyes. They gather on the worn steps of the Temple of Jupiter, cooing softly, wings fluttering like ribbons in the breeze, and just below the columned arch, an old man climbs the steps, slowly, steadily. He carries a cloth sack and a small tin bowl. No one knows his name. He doesn't speak much. He arrives every evening at this hour, just before sunset, when the air begins to cool and the city lets out a long, tired sigh. He sits on the top step, reaches into the bag, and scatters a handful of seeds. The doves respond like dancers at the sound of a flute, gathering, bobbing, pecking gently. Some perch on his knee. One rests on his shoulder. Another perches on the tip of his worn sandal. He never startles them, never moves too fast. He simply smiles and watches. Sometimes he hums an old tune, not loud enough for anyone to recognize, just enough for the doves. Above him, the temple stands quiet, its gods long silent. But this moment feels like a prayer, not to be heard, but to be felt. As the sky turns from gold to rose, the man gives a final handful of seed. He stands, brushes off his tunic, and nods to the birds as if saying goodbye. Then he walks slowly down the steps, and behind him, the doves remain, peaceful, full, and softly glowing in the light of another Roman dusk. The fortune teller's lantern. The Circus Maximus is quiet now. The last of the chariots are gone, their wheels silent beneath blankets of dusk. The scent of dust and olive oil lingers in the air, mingled with laughter that echoes faintly from another time. But just beyond the arena's outer wall, tucked beneath a faded canopy of indigo cloth, sits a small wooden table. On it, a single red lantern flickers, and beside it, a woman with deep eyes and silver-threaded hair arranges a deck of worn cards. Her name is Livia. She has told fortunes here for over 20 years, never loudly, never falsely. She doesn't make promises. She doesn't frighten. She only listens and offers what the stars and the flame choose to reveal. Tonight, no clients have come. The streets are growing still. Torches flicker in doorways. The wine shops begin to close. But Livia keeps her lantern lit, not for gold, not for fame, but because hope is stubborn, and sometimes it needs a light to find its way. She gently fans the cards and draws one, just for herself. The moon. She smiles, not because she believes in fate exactly, but because the card feels right, mysterious, gentle, a light in the dark, just like her lantern. She takes a small clay bowl, fills it with lavender and rosemary ash, and places it beside the flame. The scent drifts upward, earthy, calm. She closes her eyes and lets the silence wrap around her like a shawl. In her stillness, she sees a young couple holding hands under fig trees, a child whispering to a cat, an old soldier folding a letter he'll never send. None of them are here, but somehow she sees them, and so she keeps the lantern burning for those wandering, for those wondering, for the ones who don't know they need a little light until they find it. The Girl and the Seashells of Baiae. In the quiet hours of late afternoon, where shadows stretch long over marble ruins, a young girl walks barefoot along the shoreline of Baiae. Her name is Marcelina. Her hair is tied in a crooked braid, and her dress is speckled with sea foam. She carries a woven basket at her side, half full with treasures the sea has left behind. Baiae was once the jewel of the Roman elite, a place of steam baths, whispered secrets, garden banquets. Now the laughter has faded, and the pools are still. But Marcellina does not come for ghosts. She comes for shells. She picks them carefully. Not the largest, not the brightest, but the ones that hum softly when held to the ear. Each one holds a memory her grandmother once told her. Some of the sea, some of the people who touched it, and some just of silence. Marcellina believes this completely. As she walks, she hums to herself, a lullaby made of nonsense and salt in summer. She finds a broken conch with a pink spiral still intact. She holds it to her ear. The sound is like wind brushing a curtain, or maybe a whisper meant only for her. She places it in the basket, then another, a pale blue shell with ridges like harp strings, and another, so small it fits between 2 fingers, but smooth and glowing like pearl. Sometimes she gives them away, to fishermen, to old women selling dates, to tourists who never remember her name. Sometimes she hides them, tucks them into the cracks of ancient bath walls, between broken columns, beneath marble steps. She says they're like secret lullabies for the city, soft reminders that something beautiful still listens here. As the sky turns lavender, she sits on a warm rock and watches the waves. Her basket is full now, and when she rises to leave, she leaves behind one small shell just where the sea can find it again. The Echo of Whispers. You've wandered with us now, through temples and gardens, across courtyards and coasts, through dreams told in letters, in footsteps, in silence. These were not the tales of emperors and wars, not the marble monuments or golden triumphs. These were the quiet ones, the ones tucked behind closed shutters, whispered in moonlight, left in mosaic corners and folded scrolls. You met a girl who tended the sacred flame, a father writing from the edge of the world, a baker's child drawing his own Rome in dust. You followed the soft footsteps of a woman in the Colosseum and sat with a scribe who dreamed of every voice he ever copied. And now, you're here, still, breathing slower, wrapped in the hush of a city that never truly slept, and yet always made space for dreams. Let the stories stay with you, not loudly, not sharply, but gently, like wind through cypress, like distant harp strings, like a name carried softly across the Tiber. Sleep well. May your dreams be calm, and your thoughts as soft as olive leaves. And if you ever return to Rome, may you hear the whispers waiting for you, just beneath the surface, ready to be remembered. Thank you for listening. Sleep well, and may the eternal city keep watch over your dreams. If you made it this far without falling asleep, hit that like button, subscribe, and join us for more wild rides through history. Rome wasn't built in a day, but this channel, it's growing fast. Be part of the empire.